Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Comic Source Podcast. I'm your host, Jace. This is another Spawn, a daily episode. We're up to issue number 82. Just a reminder, if this is the first time you're joining us, what we're doing. Back in 2022, to celebrate the 30th anniversary of Spawn, I started a reading order. My plan was to read the entire main Spawn series and release one episode a day, talking about the various issues. I got to around issue 50, well, even a little before that. And I realized that a lot of the other crossovers and miniseries and one-shots and ancillary series really informed things that were happening in the main series. So I wanted to incorporate all that so that it would make it more sense. And that obviously increased the number of issues I had to read, like by times four or something ridiculous like that. And then on top of that, the co-hosts that I had, one and then another, both had to drop out. It was just too much for them to handle the daily schedule. So I kind of fell off too. I didn't really want to do it on my own. I kind of shelved the project. And the whole idea at the time was not only to celebrate the 30th anniversary of Spawn, but also to get caught up so that I could read the modern stuff that was coming out, because the Spawn line had expanded to include King Spawn, Scorched, and Gunslinger Spawn. Well, now the line is expanding even more in 2024 with things like Rat City and Home Again and Spawn Monolith and Spawn Dark Age and a lot of other series that I really want to be able to read. So jumping back on the horse, re-released all the old episodes, and now we're on to new stuff that I haven't read before. And again, it'll still be one issue per episode when it's an issue of the main series, but when it's a crossover or a mini series or Curse of the Spawn, Salmon Twitch, things like that, then I may do more than one episode or more than one issue per episode, and that's just so that it doesn't take forever. I'll just summarize those a little bit more. Maybe the episodes will be a little longer. So there's a link in the show notes. There's a gentleman by the name of Blake Whitlow. He was one of the hosts that joined me when he could, and then life kind of took over. He had to move and all kinds of stuff. So anyway, the link in the show notes, it's far and away the best reading order for Spawn that I've ever come across. In 2022, when Blake and I started doing this, he was inspired to go back and look at the reading order and make some adjustments. And it's a really, really great resource if you want to read Spawn in a chronological order so that you know that you're reading the things in the correct order and they're making sense and what have you. It's not necessarily a publishing order, right? We're going to flash back, we're going to, do other things so that it makes more sense, especially when things get retconned and shoehorned in here or there. So again, there's a link in the show notes to the Google Doc. You can go and check it out. It is a really great resource. So that being said, we're in the midst of a really great arc right now. There's an antagonist from the past that's returned to haunt Spawn, Billy Kincaid, one of the first evildoers, I guess I'll say, that Spawn took out, that Al Simmons took out when he first got his powers, when he first came back to Earth. I mean, this is going all the way back to issue number 5. So it's really a blast from the past. And Sam and Twitch had suspicions 2 issues ago that Billy Kincaid was back. He left a severed head on the doorstep of their office, along with a note saying, you got the wrong guy. He was referring to their recent supposedly solved case of the exterminator serial killer, which turned out to be a doctor named Sarah Frost, who Sam had a crush on, even went on a date with. But come to find out, it's Billy who's using the powers that Malbolgia gave him when after Spawn killed Billy. Billy went to hell. Malbolgia recruited him to be a Hellspawn, but not in the same way that Al Simmons is. He's back on the earthly plane, but as more of a ghost, if you will. He's not tangible. Most people can't see him, can't hear him, that sort of thing, but he's able to use his abilities that Malbolgia gave him to possess or sort of direct, brainwash, whatever word you want to use, other innocent people and get them to do horrific things. And the worst part about it is these are innocent people that, under normal circumstances, when they passed on, they would go to heaven when they went to the afterlife. But because they've done these horrible, unspeakable acts through the manipulations of Billy Kincaid, when they die, their soul goes to hell and becomes bonded to Billy Kincaid, and he just grows in power. So it's a really, really horrific thing. there's no doubt that Billy Kincaid is probably the worst and most evil Spawn villain, if you will, at least that we've come across to this point. So Hellspawn's going to stop Billy because at this point he doesn't even realize, or he didn't realize until the end of last issue when he was investigating this horrible murder-suicide of this young boy Lucas, who killed a priest in church during mass, and then went back to that same church later and committed suicide. And Spawn's there trying to figure out what's going on. He thought when Sarah Frost was apprehended that all this evil stuff that was going on from the exterminator killer was going to end as well. But it's clear that it hasn't. It's clear based on the acts of just unspeakable violence that are still occurring, as well as the fact that when these dead bodies show up, they have that symbol. So at the end of last issue, Billy Kincaid revealed himself to Spawn, kind of this cliffhanger ending, and now Spawn knows that Billy is back, and he's the one that's been pulling the strings all along. And to some extent, Spawn has killed innocents. He killed and tortured, or he psychologically tortured Sarah Frost to the point where she killed herself. She thought she was being covered in bugs, and that was her like greatest fear, and she poisoned herself to death with bug spray in her own kitchen. Spawn's responsible for that. To some extent, he forced her into it, but really it was Billy Kincaid that ultimately was responsible. So we'll see if Al is able to reconcile that, or if he's going to feel guilty, or we'll have to wait and see. So anyway, great cover from Greg Capullo. You guys should be able to see it on your screen there. And as we turn to the first page, this is Devil Inside Part 2. Obviously, that's referring to Billy Kincaid. He's the devil inside. Plot is by Todd McFarlane and Brian Holguin. Holguin credited for story. Greg Capullo on pencils, Danny Miki on inks, Tom Orzechowski on copy, editor, and lettering, with Dan Kemp and Brian Haberlin handling the coloring duties. And you can see the summary for Spawn 81 there. So as I said, last issue ended with Billy revealing himself. So this issue picks up right where that left off. They're in the church. Billy's there. You can see the souls of the people that he's manipulated into doing horrible things. They're standing right beside him. He's got like the Spawn chains, and Spawn's yelling out his name, and Billy's taunting him to some extent, saying, "Hey, did you miss me? I'm back." And he's sort of explaining, it was a really crappy thing for you to do, to kill me, but actually you did me a favor. You made me more powerful than ever. As much as it physically hurt for you to kill me. And as he's saying this, he's using his powers, he's using his chains to wrap Spawn up. I will say it doesn't look like Spawn is really trying to fight back here. I think he realizes that if he just bides his time, that Billy may give him some information that Spawn can use to defeat Billy. But Kincaid goes on to taunt Spawn a little bit more, again saying, "Yeah, I was really mad when you killed me, but actually, it was great because now I work for the Big M." He's referring to Malbolgia, and it's a lot easier than I thought to manipulate people into doing horrible things. Just a little push, and they give into their deepest, darkest impulses or what have you. And then he goes on to say, "I've been inside your head as well, Spawn. So it's only a matter of time before I hit you where it hurts, but not yet. There's a lot of other things to take care of first. A lot of other people are going to die. I'm just getting started." And so again, he's really taunting Spawn. He wants Al to feel responsible for this killing spree. I mean, he says right out, "It's going to be all your fault, because you're the one that killed me and allowed me to have these powers," or what have you. So Billy leaves, disappears, and the cops show up. They're aiming their guns at Spawn, yelling, "Freeze, psycho," what have you. And Spawn uses his powers to snuff out the candles in the church, which are pretty much the only source of illumination, and he escapes into the darkness. But unfortunately, he can't escape his responsibilities for taking down Billy Kincaid and the responsibility he feels for having killed him in the first place. So the next scene, it's a kind of a trademark of Capullo, right? We've seen him use this kind of format before. Sometimes he'll start where he's zoomed out and he'll zoom way in on these long vertical panels. This one's the opposite. He's zoomed in on Spawn and he slowly pulls back as Spawn is back in Manhattan on a rooftop, contemplating what he's going to do next. Feeling a little sorry for himself, wallowing a bit, if we're honest about it. So as he's sitting there trying to figure out what he's possibly going to do next, Twitch shows up and he's carrying the box that Kincaid left on his doorstep. I'm not sure why it took Sam and or Twitch so long to approach Spawn. They know he has a connection to Kincaid as well. And so, yeah, he's there and he says, can I speak with you? And he's like, Twitch, what are you doing here? Like people sneaking up on me. And, how did you even know where I was? And this is where we get the clue that there might be some sort of supernatural connection between Twitch and Spawn since Spawn healed him. And he says, how do I know what my phone number is or what the color blue is? I just knew. The doctors don't seem to have a logical explanation for a lot of things about me lately. Like I have this sort of sixth sense, and it happened ever since you saved my life. And he kind of taps himself on the forehead. And Spawn kind of dismisses. He's like, whatever. What are you doing here? Where's your walking heart attack of a partner? And Twitch says, well, he doesn't know I'm here. I'm not sure if he would approve, but we think the child killer, Billy Kincaid, is back. He left a severed head on our office doorstep, and we can't exactly take it to the police. And Spawn confirms it. He goes, yeah, I know Kincaid is back. I can take care of that head for you. Did your, sixth sense tell you that too? That Kincaid is back, and that he's out for revenge for the people that wronged him. And Twitch says, well, not really. It makes sense. And Spawn says, yeah, and it's all my fault. I thought killing him was the right thing to do. I thought he deserved it. But it's only made him stronger. And now he's forcing all these innocent people to commit horrible crimes. So now it's like twofold, right? Spawn feels responsible for the people that are killed, and he feels responsible for the people that are doing the killing kind of against their will in a way. Twitch tries to say, hey, you made a judgment call. It seemed like the right thing at the time. Even if it turned out wrong, I understand. And Spawn kind of snaps at him. He's like, you don't understand anything. And Twitch, and really these last few issues, and even going into the next couple, really give us some insight into who Twitch is. He's a very complicated character. And I wonder about his appearance, right? He's almost like a Columbo-like figure, right? Great legendary Peter Falk television character who's actually a favorite of a lot of comic book writers like Tom King. And it's that disheveled look, that look where you would underestimate him. You don't realize just how smart he is and that sort of thing. And I feel like Twitch is in that mold. And I wonder if McFarlane had given any thought to making him look a little more like Columbo rather than what he does look like, the balding and the afro, if you will, and the glasses. Kind of interesting to think about. But anyway, Twitch goes on to say, I've read your file. I know what kind of man you were when you were alive. You believed in honor and duty, and even those weren't enough to save you. And I know how you feel about Wanda and Terry, and it's going to be horrible to lose the people that you love. And I tell you, I know exactly what that feels like. And he shows Spawn a picture of his wife. And Spawn says, that's your wife? She's very pretty. And he said, yeah, that's her. And they kind of share a moment there because Spawn is back from the dead simply because of the love that he has for his wife. And, Twitch can relate to that. He loves Helen, his wife, just as much as Spawn loves Wanda. And you could see Twitch making a deal with the devil to come back as well. So definitely sort of a different sort of connection there. One that's maybe a little more voluntary as opposed to the involuntary one that they seem to be sharing because Al Simmons healed Twitch. So the scene does shift to Helen, and she's with one of Twitch's boys. They're just coming from the zoo. They're talking about what favorite animals were and what have you. And they get on the subway and start to take the subway home. And they're not on there very long before somebody fires a gunshot. We see a deranged man. Looks like he's the latest to be possessed uh, by Billy Kincaid, and he tells everybody on the train that they're going to be unavoidably delayed. So we'll see exactly how that plays out here in just a second. But first, we see a an escort show up at the home of Ethan Crone. We get some context here. We get some dialogue boxes, the latest entries to his book, and he's talking about the Hellspawn rumor, the urban myth, about this impossibly powerful being and what have you. And this woman shows up and interrupts. She says her name is Velvet, and he says, "You're early." And she's like, "Well, where do you wanna?" And he's like, "I'm working." And he goes and he sits back down at his computer and he starts typing. He's listening to some recorded interviews from various people. Um, and, this is a beautiful woman who's showed up at his apartment. He would rather write about Spawn right now. I mean, maybe it's a little bit kind of OCD and he's got to, stay on schedule or what have you, but it's a little interesting. Like his interest in Spawn seems to be growing. He doesn't seem to be able to let things go. He's falling kind of deeper and deeper into this um, mystery of who Spawn is. Like he started off saying it was an urban myth and the guy didn't even really exist, and now he's ignoring, real life people to ruminate on his thoughts of Spawn. And the girl says, I don't really care. I don't mind waiting. And what are you writing about? And he says, it's about a hooker with a heart of gold. I'll send you a copy, which is obviously a reference to Pretty Woman, right? And she says, hey, don't talk to me like that. I got a master's from Vassar. I'm just doing this to pay some bills, which is interesting. And, we've heard of that. Obviously, rumors of very highly educated women escorting to make exorbitant amounts of money and pay off college and what have you. Um, so that kind of throws him off, and he says it's about the end of the world. That's what Ethan Crone says, um, and she goes, "Oh, no wonder you're so tense. You're writing about the end of the world. So are you ready now to relieve some of that tension?" And just as they're about to go into the bedroom, he hears a news report, and it's a woman on TV talking about the man on the train who has taken everybody hostage. So obviously that's a terrible situation, and it definitely would make headlines right away, um, even in New York City, where that's not something that happens every day. So scene shifts back to the train, and this guy's saying all kinds of crazy stuff about being Lord of the Underworld, Master of the Universe, and all sorts of stuff. And when he's looking the other way, somebody tries to sneak up on him. He sees him, shoots him in the knee, and then asks the other members of the train, the other passengers, if anybody else wants to be a hero. And that kind of inspires him. He's like, yeah, that's what we should do, right? Let's see who wants to get out of the subway train alive. So negotiations are open if anybody wants to bargain. And he starts calling people out. And he says, hey, would you stomp Mr. Kneecap here? And he's calling him Mr. Kneecap because he shot this guy in the kneecap. Anybody want to stomp Mr. Kneecap to death? And then, I'll let you leave. Anybody, like nobody's wanting to negotiate. Obviously, everybody's, wanting to stay under the radar and not be noticed. And then unfortunately, this guy turns his attention to Helen and her son and Twitch's son. And he starts talking about the Bible and Abraham and, sacrificing children to God and what have you. And Helen's like, get away from us. You're sick. I don't know what's wrong with you. And so this guy tells her, okay, look, I'm not going to tell you to kill him, but what I want you to do is I want you to cut off his ear. You cut off his ear and I'll let you both go. He says, you have my word as a supreme deity. This guy thinks he's a supreme deity. He says, if you don't, well, I'm going to blow his brains out. So giving Helen a choice, either cut off the ear of your son or I'm going to kill him. Like, what a horrible, horrible thing, right? I mean, you can't help but put yourself in that situation. I hope I would be able to save my child's life. But likely I'd do the same thing that Helen does here. She takes the knife from him. This guy's holding a gun on him. And she takes the knife, and instead of cutting off her son's ear, she stabs the guy in the leg, I guess hoping to hit the femoral artery. And so just as he's about to turn his gun on Helen and her son, um, Spawn breaks through the top of the subway train, grabs the guy around the neck by with one of his chains, and he starts yelling at Billy Kincaid, "Hey, I know you are possessing this guy. Get out of him. Let him go." And the guy starts choking and convulsing, and Spawn's begging, "Don't die, Mister. Stay with me." Um, but he succumbs to whatever it is that Billy's able to do to him. I want to say remotely, but by possessing him, because we did see earlier when Sam shot the guy that had shot Twitch in the forehead. Sam only shot him in the shoulder, and he shouldn't have died from that wound. It was a superficial wound at best, and yet we know he did die in that alley uh, because Billy is able to do something. We don't know exactly how he's able to use his powers, but he's able to use his powers in some way to kill the people that he's possessing. So that's what happens to this um, stockbroker, I'm guessing, banker of some sort. He did want to negotiate. And as he falls dead, Spawn notices on his neck he's got that same mark that we saw on Sarah Frost, that we saw on the guy that shot Sam and Twitch. We never saw it on the boy Lucas, but you assume it's there. Um, and so Helen and Lucas are sorry, Helen and her son are safe, and Spawn disappears off into the night. And as he's running along the train, he sees Billy. Billy allows himself to be seen once again. And now he has not only the souls that we saw with him at the end of last issue, Sarah Frost, the guy that shot at Sam and Twitch, and the young boy Lucas, but now we see the bankers with him as well. And again, Billy taunting Al, saying, "Nice try, Hellspawn, but he belongs to me now." And he starts chanting, "One of us, one of us, one of us." This is right around the time that Finding Nemo came out, I think. And that was a kind of a line that was in the zeitgeist, if you will, at the time. So I think that's what that is kind of referring to. So meanwhile, in Queens at Granny Blake's house, Cyan and Terry and Wanda are there for a visit, and Wanda goes inside to get Cyan some juice, and Granny is there holding Cyan, and when all of a sudden she senses something, and she looks out on the sidewalk and she sees Billy Kincaid standing there, which is interesting, right? Because Granny is blind. She can't see. She shouldn't be able to see anything, but she yells out, "Hey, get away from here. Don't think just because I'm blind, I can't see you." And Cyan's like, who are you talking to? And she continues yelling, "I ain't afraid of you. Get out of here. Don't come back ever." And Kincaid responds by blowing her a kiss, saying, "Bye bye, little girl. I'll be back." So clearly insinuating he's going to come back and try to possess Cyan. How that might work with Spawn's connection to her, I guess we'll have to wait and see. But he says, first, before Cyan, I know somebody else that we can have a lot of fun playing with. And on the last page, we see Jason Wynn. And the little blurb for next issue says the return of Jason Wynn. So it's been a long time since we've seen Wynn. He figured prominently early on in the series as kind of a thorn in Spawn's side. He was Al Simmons' boss. He's the one that ordered Al Simmons to be assassinated. And he's just all in all a bad guy, right? Like, I don't think he's as evil as Kincaid is, but he's up there. His evil, like Kincaid is like depraved. Like he's evil almost for evil's sake. He just wants to watch the world burn in a lot of ways. He just wants to see as many people die and as many people suffer as possible. When the things he does, it's almost like a lack of morality. He does things out of pure selfishness, out of greed, to amass power, to make sure he's the one in control, he's the one calling the shots. So he's not necessarily evil, but he won't hesitate for 1 second to kill somebody or do something completely awful and despicable and commit an evil act, if it's going to make him look better, if it's going to to help him out with, whatever his goal is. So he is a bad guy. Don't get me wrong. He is a bad guy. I just don't think he rises to the level of a Billy Kincaid. So great to see him back, sitting in that dark room, um, you know, cigar in hand, shadows across his face, whatever. Great job by Capullo. A lot of detail there. And I also want to call out the colors by Haberlin and Brian Haberlin and Dan Kemp. They've been fantastic throughout these recent issues. And I especially like when we see Billy and how and the other spirits or souls or whatever you call them, that he has kind of trapped with him, how they seem to sort of glow, and but yet they're not fully there. The colors are a bit muted and what have you. So that's really interesting. Just yeah, all in all, a fantastic job on the line work from Capullo, as we've come to expect. And then the other thing about the issue that I really love was the scene between Twitch and Spawn. How it's a little bit Spawn is a little antagonistic toward Twitch to begin with, but then they sort of bond over how much they both love their wives, which I thought was a really kind of touching moment. And yeah, it remains to be seen how long this bond between Twitch and Spawn will last, and what exactly they can do with it. Can they leverage it to maybe stop Billy Kincaid in some way? I guess we'll have to wait and see. So anyway, a really fantastic issue, a lot of action going on, and really digging the direction Spawn is going right now. So don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Really appreciate everybody subscribing. I'm getting real close to 500 subscribers. Hopefully at that point I'll be able to monetize and make a little bit of money, even if it's $1 or $2. Every little bit helps to help defray the cost of producing the podcast. So again, if you haven't subscribed, please do so. Ring the notification bell so you know when new episodes come out, especially stuff that's other than Spawn. And then, of course, leave comments below. Let me know what you thought of this issue. Really love to talk to people in the comment section. If you're curious about any of the other audio-only content from the comic source that we've done in the past, I'm really trying to do everything on both audio and YouTube going forward since the year started. But we do have plenty of other episodes, over 2,000 of them, from previous to 2024, and you can find those on whatever your favorite podcast app or podcast platform is. Just do a search for the Comic Source and subscribe. So that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. Appreciate you joining me as always, and we will talk to you next time.